Hi, I'm Bob Knote, and on this episode of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, I'm going to demonstrate how you install those fuel injectors on that fuel rail. You got to do it right. Dang it. So why did you take this apart in the first place? There's two reasons. First of all, and the most common reason, is these little things right here. Because these things get rock hard over time and they can crack and they can generate the usual engine fire because there's no lack of ignition sources down there in the Valley of Death, ordinarily. So that's reason one. The other reason is that you want to take these injectors, have them cleaned or clean them yourself, as I demonstrated in the past few episodes, so that you know that you've got, number one, an injector that's working, and number two, that it is cleaned out. You got new filters, new pintle caps, and this thing is as close to new as you can make it. These are available new if you're made out of money, but usually you can clean them up. So when I say you got to do it right, you can have all new parts, but if you don't get it done properly, it can generate problems, and they can have catastrophic consequences. So let's see what we've got here. We've got everything that is steel, sandblasted and coated with a paint that I really have come to appreciate over the years, and that is Duplicolor caliper paint, silver, number BCP 103. The reason I use this stuff is, number one, it doesn't require a primer. Number two, it dries fast and hard, and because of where it's going to be living down there in the Valley of Death, it's heat resistant because it's caliper paint. Now, the reason that I paint all these things is because even if you just take some Scotch-Brite and you clean them up, you get all that oil off of them, and these things will start rusting within days. It'll be even worse if you sandblast everything to clean them up. So it's really important that you get these things coated. And that caliper paint is the best product for that purpose, in my opinion. You can see we've got all of our fuel injectors that we cleaned and tested during the last episode. We've got the rubber cushions that fit in their little retainers that fit on the fuel injector. Those are all ready to go. We also have the seals that fit on the end of the fuel injector, that seals between the manifold and the injector. It's very important those be new. And then over here we've got our hoses, one of the reasons why we took this thing apart in the first place. These are the ones that fit between the fuel rail and the injector. These have to be 1 7/8 inches long, and all of them have to be as close to that number as possible. You're going to need 10 of those. You're going to need 2 of these that are 3.5 inches long. Again, they need to be close to that number. The first thing we're going to do is assemble these 3 pieces: the fuel injector, the rubber cushion, and the retaining ring. You just slide this on, make sure that this ridge is on the top, and at this point we take the rubber cushion. It's not quite as easy if you're straddling a camera. Start sliding it up, and try to, there's a notch here on the top, line that up with the boss that the electrical connector hooks to, and then just keep pushing and it'll drop into the slot in the body of the fuel injector. And there it is. Repeat 11 more times. Now the most finicky part of the process is installing these hoses onto the fuel rail and the fuel injectors. Fuel rail, it's not too much of a mind bender because all you've really got to do is take these grommets, lay them on where they're supposed to be. There's a little shoulder down here. You want to make sure that it fits all the way down against the fuel rail. And then we're going to take this little tool, which is nothing more than a 5/16 bolt with a nut on it, slide this on, and then we're going to be able to very easily slide this down. Now what some people have done in the past is actually take a little WD-40 and some other lubricant in order to slide this on more easily. But the problem with that I see is that that really never dries. It's always in there, and it could conceivably cause this to the hose to slip off or change its position enough where it could start leaking. So what I use for a lubricant is I lick my finger and just sort of wipe that around, put the grommet on, and then slide the hose on. Now you want to slide it on until you can no longer rotate the grommet. Still moving. There. And then you extract your tool. And that's installed. Now at this point, we want to install a fuel injector on this. The problem with that is that we can't forget to put this on. This is the hold down that secures the fuel injector in the manifold. Now, we need to remember that the first three of these have the electrical connector boss facing forward. That includes the front one, which will be oriented like this, okay, with the boss forward. So what you have to do is you have to have these oriented the proper way. Now these holes are going to be on the outside of the fuel rail with, in this case, the boss facing forward like this. Might not be a bad idea to go ahead and install all of the first three. Now remember, this is number 1, number 2, number 3. They'll get installed like that. The next two, number 4 and 5, have the electrical terminal connector facing rearward. So these are going to go on like this. The last one, though, is going to have its boss facing forward like that. And what I would do at this point is just take these and lay these off to the side. And when I get to them, I would go ahead and install them. Now, in order to get the fuel injector on here, it's kind of the reverse of the process. You, first of all, lubricate your hose barb, slide this on, make sure that this part is on, because you're gonna waste a piece of hose, and this stuff is sold by the inch otherwise. And then just sort of, and then just slide it down. Same process until you can no longer turn the grommet. The bolts are on the outside of the fuel rail. And repeat 11 more times. you may have noticed in the time lapse that the plastic hammer appeared. And that's because the center of my hand is kind of sore from another thing that happened today. So I need a little help on the end of this bolt to get those on, and it worked great. And you know, because of the fact that the rubber does serve to cushion the blows against the fuel rail, there's really no danger of hurting anything. This end's a little tricky, you know, to figure out which way this needs to go, but it's just a matter of, you know, thinking things out. Now, you may have noticed that we're missing something here. I was kind of letting my mind wander to the editing suite, what I'm going to do later, and I left out the tie down or the hold down clamp off. This is a great opportunity to demonstrate how hard it is to get these off and why it's not necessary under normal circumstances to have clamps here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not coming off. So what I've got to do here is I've got to cut another piece of hose and cut this off and remove that hose just like as if I were removing an old one. So I think it's a good object lesson though. By the way, this is according to the people at Continental who make the hose, that is the number we need. 5/16 SAE 30R14T2 hose. It's first of all high pressure fuel injection hose, and also it's the right diameter so that these barbs can hang onto it without coming loose. Now, I said you don't need clamps, but there is a circumstance under which you really might, because some of the fuel injectors actually have a significant number of pits on the first barb at least, and you may find it necessary to actually put a clamp just on that end. The fuel rails never have this issue. This is where the water settles, and you may find that you have a leak there. JB Weld probably doesn't fix everything, and you know, a clamp. Now, if you do use a clamper, don't clamp it down really tight, because you can actually tighten it to the point where the fuel barb will actually start to cut through the hose. So if you have a fuel injector that looks like this, you want to inspect that on a regular basis. And I actually have one in Old Tex that started leaking, and I had to put a clamp on. So, you know, you got to do what you got to do. So there's a couple of things that I'd like to mention before I wrap up this episode. Number one, I don't think I stressed the importance of having the right fuel line on here. You can get low pressure line for regular fuel pump systems that use carburetors, and that, you know, those systems run maybe 10 psi. Fuel injected systems run triple that, more in a lot of cases. So you got to have the right hose. If you use the low pressure hose, you're going to blow it out over time, and you're going to generate the usual engine fire, which is kind of why you did this in the first place. Okay, so you got to have the right hose. The other thing is, if you remember this tool that I use to push the lines on the fuel rail, what I've done is I've gone to the hardware store, bought a $2 knob. That works much better pushing these things on. $3 tool. All right, so what am I going to do with this? Well, Old Tex, my 1987 XJS, which you saw in the intro, has an idle missing situation that I haven't been able to deal with, checking all the other things I've had. So now we're going to the fuel injection system. So we've cleaned these and checked them all out. They're going on. And if you remember from a few episodes ago, we did a few of these wiring harnesses. I made 2 of them from scratch. And I got this one that is perfectly good, but you know, I just really didn't like the look of it on a client's engine. So we're going to put this on that car, and hopefully that'll solve that idle miss issue. So if you like these videos, like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, which is up and running at this point. Maybe leave some comments down below. Give us a little insight as to how we can do what we do better. So we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicle.